I'm not too sure. I don't think they did well.
He's a bully.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche. Done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tie. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
They still have a lot of holes to fill.
He didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. No, he didn't get fired. He never got his contract renewed.
Welcome. Evan, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Just made a trip, moved my palatial studios to a different room, and I'm having internet connections. Go ahead and figure. Doesn't matter if you buy the top of the line or what. Hey, guys, great to be back. So, Two Guys in Hockey Talk, Season 5. We are Episode 3 to start our 42-episode season. Just the intro song that we brought in is Penny Billionaires, guys. Go give them a follow. They're one of our sponsors. We have the exclusive rights to their song. They're based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And yes, we got Arizona fans. We got Nevada fans. And we also have fans in Illinois, which we're going to get to our guests in just a moment. Why don't you go ahead and let everyone know where they can follow us?
Well, you can guys give us a follow on Facebook. We have our website, Two Guys in Hockey Talk. Just look it up on Google. We are connected with Sports Empire for all your sporting needs. You can find us on YouTube, on Twitter. You can find Evan at RevNev or me at Hockey_2, where we're talking all things hockey, everything. And we have an article almost weekly up on our website. You guys are seeing it right now. It's what Evan is posting. We've got a lot going on. Evan just posted PTO or no PTO. It's a pretty good read. Give it a follow. And we work with JRW Designs, who made this website. It's amazing. If you're looking for a website, go to them. They do amazing work. Right, Evan?
Oh, they do fabulous work, and they actually do it for a good price. So all you guys are looking for good prices, because we know a lot of hockey fans, they want to spend their money on hockey. They want to spend it on beer. And some of them, as we're going to find out in just a moment, like to spend it on cigars. So, guys, why don't I introduce our guest tonight? He's been covering the Blackhawks for almost 20 years or even more. He covers the team for Bleacher Nation. He's the author of 2 books. We're going to talk to him about the retirement of the jersey number for Steve Larmer and get his take on it here tonight. We are excited to have, following the Chicago Blackhawks, Tab Bamford. Welcome, man, to the show.
Gentlemen, good to be with you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. So with every show, with every new guest that comes on the show, we always ask, where did your passion first emerge for hockey? Was there a moment in time that you fell in love with the game?
Well, that actually has a lot to do with, if you can see this lovely shirt that I have from the beautiful people at Obvious Shirts here in Chicago. My dad was actually a marketing guy for a hospital in the suburbs outside of Chicago. And when I was, I think, 5 years old, a bunch of Blackhawks came out to do some publicity stuff at a blood drive. Blackhawks in the 80s, donating blood kind of went hand in hand. And I met a few of the players, and one of the guys who was incredibly nice, who signed an autograph on a little picture for me and was just, like I said, just the kindest guy in the world, was Steve Larmer. And a couple years later, went to a game, saw it in person, and I think hockey is one of the very few sports that the television does not do it justice, though it has taken leaps and bounds forward with high definition, because you can actually see the puck without Fox making it glow in the dark for us. But when you go see it in person, and that was back in the day in the 80s with the Savard and Larmer teams, just before the arrival of Jeremy Roenick, but great teams, the old Chicago Stadium, which was one of one. And I think if you were old enough to see a game at the Chicago Stadium, there was no way you weren't going to fall in love with the game of hockey. And the more you get to see the players and meet the players, for the most part, they do a good job of representing the game and making you want to fall in love with it even more. So it was a meeting at a PR event with Steve Larmer that made me be like, this dude's a really nice professional athlete. And then seeing him play on the ice, it was over. I was hooked. Not without the 2-minute minor.
So we're going to get in a little bit more into, maybe we'll talk a little bit later about some old time hockey and come into the Steve Larmer. Are the Chicago Blackhawks, okay, so, people that are not listening in maybe from Illinois or know much about the Blackhawks, is there something that's put up around the stadium or something about their own wall of fame, of their own personal hall of fame, where Steve Larmer's number's been retired or anything along that line? Could you update us on that?
His number has not been retired yet, which is criminal. And I won't. We would be here for 2 hours if I started rattling off the reasons why. But his number's not retired. The Blackhawks do not have a Ring of Honor yet. They do not have a Team Hall of Fame yet. But both of those have been floated by the upper management group because the Blackhawks will turn 100 years old in a couple short years.
Wow.
And so, like Boston's going through it this year as the first U.S.-based team in the original six. 1926 was the founding of the Blackhawks. So they've talked about a lot of different options for that. But they did announce just a while ago that they will finally be retiring number 7 for Chris Chelios.
Okay.
Wow.
Which was, for some people in like the 38 to 50 demo, fairly controversial because of the whole I'm never going to play for the Dead Wings, and then wins the cup with the Dead Wings and brings it back to Chicago, his hometown at Wrigley Field in a Dead Wings jersey. But it was also somewhat controversial for other fans because some feel that that's Brent Seabrook's number. But with the retirement of Chelios' number, mind you, the Blackhawks by far have the fewest retired numbers of any original six team.
Interesting.
New principal owner Danny Wirtz, with Rocky having passed away unfortunately recently, he came out and said that they've come up with some guidelines, some really kind of, I guess you could say, firm criteria for considering jersey retirements, and that would lead you to believe, based on those criteria, that the door is open for number 28 to be retired, and possibly another one. I see that shark sweater on the wall. The other jersey that me being an 80s kid, there's no good reason that Doug Wilson's 24 isn't in the rafters at the United Center either.
Absolutely.
Especially with him being in the Hockey Hall of Fame now. So those are the two guys from my childhood in the 80s that I've felt for a long time should have been up there. And I think with the guidelines that they put forth when they announced that Chris Chelios' number is going to go into the rafters, there's a real opportunity that those two get their rightful banners where they belong at some point, hopefully soon.
It's actually kind of interesting when you think of Chris Chelios, right? He played for Montreal, he played for Chicago, and he played for Detroit. What's the chance in a modern day era that you're going to have a player that's actually played for 3 of the original 6?
Well, and the good news is he probably pissed off Toronto at all 3 stops. So, like I know he did. Though I did see also that when he posted on Instagram, the way that they told Chris his number was going to be retired was they brought him up on stage at a Pearl Jam concert at the United Center.
Yes.
Because Chris is great friends with Eddie Vedder. And Eddie Vedder, he thought that they were doing something to honor Rocky Wirtz. And so he had a Blackhawks jersey on backwards with the number 23 and Rocky on it. Because one of the things that a lot of people are like, why the heck is his jersey backwards? Something that Chris Chelios has always done to honor Blackhawks legends who have passed away. So he'll go every year and sing the 7th inning stretch at Cubs games. Nice. And when Stan Mikita died, he had a Mikita jersey on backwards so that you could read the name and see the number. When Tony Esposito passed away, jersey on backwards as he's singing the 7th inning stretch. So he went on stage thinking that they were going to honor Rocky. So he had the jersey on backwards, so it said Rocky. And then Eddie Vedder pointed up at the screen, and they showed a montage, and it had the banner coming down with his name on it, and everybody got all the feels and all the good stuff. So, I've met Chris a number of times throughout the years, My favorite interaction was when he was coaching his two sons' Little League team, and he signed my umpire card after asking me what I thought about his son Jake hitting a pitch that bounced for a home run. And I said, based on the pitch location, he should follow you into the family business, which got a good laugh and harsh criticism on my umpire evaluation card, and the John Hancock, which is all I cared about. But he's always been Chicago through and through. He went to Detroit,
crazy.
but he's always been a Blackhawk. He put on a bucket hat and sunglasses and went in the crowd to see the parade in 2010. He's a lifer here. He just happened to accept the trade to the Evil Empire. So if you can get over the fact that everyone's been traded and everyone goes somewhere else at some point, I think we can accept Chris Chelios back into the fold, because he was a hell of a captain here. He was the face of the
amazing
franchise for a number of years, and he was as good as it got on the blue line.
Yeah. No, I know. I have a San Jose jersey because I ordered my Connor Bedard, which we're going to chat about in a bit. So the jersey's coming in. So I promise, like, it's a little bit behind because I'm slowly building up my collection. And I do agree. I think every team, like the Chicago team, should incorporate their own Hall of Fame and start including more players, because it's a great way to honor. It's a great way for the fans to really appreciate the history, especially such a dynamic history, which we can get into a little bit later with the Hawks. But I think we all want to know the reaction of how you and the city are feeling about getting such a potentially, and I don't want to put in quotations, generational talent, because he has yet to skate on the ice officially in this first NHL game. What does it mean to get Connor Bedard as the first overall pick for that team and building forward to potentially a new dynasty after what you guys had with Taze and Kane?
Well, it means everything, man. I mean, look, I think you kind of have to wrap the entire last 3 or 4 years in context to understand. I think there's a lot of people outside of Chicago that are like, screw Chicago, they won, they don't need it. But a few years back, the revelations came out, the report that the Blackhawks commissioned in the wake of the allegations of what happened to Kyle Beach. And that was, I would submit, the lowest point in the history of the Chicago Blackhawks, because whether the players want to admit it or management wants to admit it, for a lot of people, that has put a little bit of a tinge on the dynasty era. And so really, it wasn't that they were just bad on the ice because Stan Bowman didn't draft well for 6 years and didn't have the cap space to keep good players like Artemi Panarin. Which I won't get into whether or not he would actually win them a cup, because Rangers fans will be like, thanks for giving us a guy who doesn't show up in May. But you went from the top of the mountain to slowly sliding off, and then really the bottom was falling out on the ice. And then that came out, and it was really about as low as you can possibly get as a professional franchise. And there were some missteps that probably could have been handled better. The court of public opinion now with social media is going to take everything to the 11th degree. And bluntly, that what happened was disgusting, and it was handled as poorly as possible. And the blowback that the individuals involved received was deserved. So how do you then move forward? That's the hardest thing, right? All of the individuals are gone. The management individuals who are part of that are gone. Most of the players who may or may not have known about it are gone. So how do you move forward? And when Stan Bowman gets run because of that, you have kind of an open recruiting session, and they promote Kyle Davidson, who's 33 years old at the time. This young guy who nobody knows, and they think that he's just some computer geek from downstairs. They gave him his red swing line stapler back and let him upstairs, and he can be the GM. He comes upstairs and boldly says, we're going to tear this thing down and start over. And let people like, really? Come on, man. And then he trades Alex DeBrincat, who's supposed to be the guy that you would build around. He's 24 years old. He trades Kirby Doc, who's 21, going into his 4th season. You use the 3rd overall pick on. People are like, what the hell, man? What are we doing? And then last year, the whole season, you're in the room, and every single game, road media, especially when the Canadian teams came in. Toronto comes in, there's 18 extra cameras. Patrick Kane, when are you going to waive your no move? Jonathan Taves, when are you going to waive your no move? and it just, there was a cloud over the organization dealing with the reality that you were coming to the end with 19 and 88.
Yeah.
And so to win the draft lottery in the wake of burning it down and trying to have this breath of fresh air, I think just brought an entirely different and new energy into the Chicago Blackhawks fan base, into the city.
Yeah.
And the difference, and we talked about this the other day when we were getting ready to speak with the general manager to start training camp. The difference between Connor Bedard coming in and when Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane came in is when Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews came in, the Blackhawks weren't even on life support in the city. They were a non-element. It wasn't that there was apathy from the fans or angst from the fans. There were no fans. There were more Detroit fans at Blackhawks games in Chicago than Blackhawks fans. Literally, I had friends that knew what I would yell when guys touched the puck, and I'd get text messages. Dude, are you yelling at Chara? I can hear you. There's like so they built this team into a media culture. They built it into a success story. They resurrected the franchise. And it wasn't just Kane and Toews. I'd be incredibly remiss if I left Nick Chalmers and Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook and Corey Crawford and Patrick Sharp. So many of those other guys are so important. But they resurrected the franchise in the sports scene in Chicago. And that came to an end. And there's no easy way for those relationships to end. And so the last year and a half, 2 years for Kyle Davidson was just, he walked into a cauldron that was already on fire. And then he had to figure out, what do I do with this thing as a first-time GM who's now 35 years old at this point? And how do I convince ownership, much less the fans, that at some point, Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane aren't going to be Chicago Blackhawks? Right. And so if you like the idea of the Disney narrative and the story and the script writing itself out, the fact that the Blackhawks were as bad as they were, got the payoff, and got the lottery win for Connor Bedard really jumpstarts everything again. But I will say this. It wasn't like they just went into the toilet and were awful and unwatchable last year. Luke Richardson's a hell of a coach. I've said this about 1,000 times.
He was good.
The smartest thing that Davidson's done since he became the GM was hire Luke Richardson. If I could pick literally one guy that I've interacted with in the NHL to run a rebuild, it's Luke Richardson based on what I've seen in the last year.
Well, we can talk a little bit later maybe about coaching and how sometimes this is like, we're looking at you, Columbus, how you shouldn't be recycling old coaches and give new teams new life. Not to stray from our conversation, but that's the whole thing is Luke Richardson had so much success in the smaller leagues or in the lesser leagues, right? And yet he came up and was able to develop these guys and is now has a talent pool of a lot of good prospects coming up. So even though you're getting a generational talent, you've got other guys coming up who can really make an impact with surrounding them with veterans that Davidson has really done. I will say as a caveat, I did enjoy his interview with the random guy who was interviewing on the streets and didn't realize it was Davison. And, he was asking about the draft and stuff. I thought that was really priceless.
Kyle from Chicago?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, his post-draft press conference, he was obviously asked about Kyle from Chicago. And one of the first things he said was his phone blew up with a lot of people from Chicago saying, way to go. A lot of people with the organization being like, we didn't think this would go viral. But even more people reminding him that he's Kyle from Sudbury. He's not Kyle from Chicago.
That's so funny. Okay, so I do want to just take a moment and go back. So Ray out of New Jersey is actually specifically, I just want to remind anyone that was following. So interesting, when the whole Kyle Beach thing came out and Duncan Keith was traded to Edmonton, if I can remind some of you 2 seasons ago, that was, I think we had like 38,000 hits that night. That came in on the show of Pavel and I totally in a disagreement on the Duncan Keith situation. You got to go back in your seasons, go find it. I think it was the end of season 3. So, but I do want to come back. I wrote an article just before the draft called "Bedard has landed in Blackhawk Nation." This is when people were saying, well, they might trade the pick or not. Now, one thing I do, Tab, is I've been following prospects since, I guess it would be 1986. 87, especially started in 1988. At that time, I had no idea how the scouting world worked or anything. In fact, some people kind of look at me as a creeper. I joke that I was at the Brick Invitational watching 10-year-old Cole Caulfield and Jack Hughes searching, and I have them in my phone still, like 15 years later, Now, Bedard, interesting enough, and again, we have another article that you can go find in that same place about how Bedard at junior levels has outscored per game and in the Olympics, in the juniors, Connor McDavid. Now, I know he's smaller. I just have been arguing with some of you when it comes on social media. And by the way, you can disagree all you want. You have the right to be wrong. I totally give you permission. But there's something different about Bedard. Now, there is one thing out there. I want you just to speak to this quickly. We won't take too much time because we don't want to waste all our time going backwards. There are fans out there, Tab, that believe that a draft pick should have been taken away, of course, because of the Kyle Beach scenario, even though that's a criminal. That's not something that's happened on ice. Circumventing a cap is on ice. We've gone through this in our shows. However, am I wrong or am I right in that if a pick had been taken away, it wouldn't be the Bedard year. It would have been the previous season.
I believe you're right because Stan Bowman was relieved of his duties by the Blackhawks, and the report came out in, I want to say it was late September or early October of 21. Yeah. So it would have been but I'm trying
Findings.
to jog what? I think it would have ended up being their 23 first rounder because they didn't have a 22 first at the time of the league sanctioning them because they had traded 21 and 22 first to Columbus for Seth Jones. Right. And then the two picks that they got, or the three picks actually that they got back into the first round were all acquired in draft day trades during the 22 draft. So they traded DeBrincat to Ottawa and landed Kevin Korchinski and another pick. They traded Doc to Montreal and got Frank Nazar at 13. And then they traded up, I think it was like 18 or 19 spots with Toronto from the early second to the late first to take Peter Mrazek's paper off their books and got Sam Renzel, a young defenseman, with their third pick. So they added three picks pretty much within 24 hours of the end of the first round. So
there is a possibility
because a first rounder.
Yeah,
I think the next available first rounder for the Blackhawks would have been 23.
Interesting. Okay, so let's leave that. Let's go to the question. Everybody in the hockey world, across the nations, are interested in Connor Bedard. Tell us what the fanfare, what's happening in Chicago, where you are, what's happening around the rinks. Give us some updates.
Well, tomorrow is Thursday, the 21st of September, which means we get to figure out exactly how much hell is going to break loose. There's already, so the Blackhawks had to get special sanctions or whatever from the NHL and the Players Association. You guys may have noticed at the draft, when he walked up on stage, he was the only guy to get a jersey that didn't have the year on it. Connor Bedard walked up there and put on 98. Because guess what went on sale 30 seconds after they got done putting him on stage? 98 jerseys. And there was a line at the Blackhawks party in Chicago around a city block to buy Connor Bedard jerseys at the watch party in Chicago before the fourth pick of the draft was off the board. So, and again, this kind of goes back to contextualizing where we're at. When Kane and Taves arrived, literally their rookie season, there were like 8,000 people there. Now the Blackhawks are back. The Blackhawks have a brand. And so when this happens, all of the media is lining up for the Blackhawks in Chicago. And now you've got all of the external excitement for Connor Bedard becoming a pro finally. And I've made the comp to other people. Connor Bedard really is in that rare element of like a Bryce Harper in baseball or a LeBron James in basketball, in that he's been on the cover of magazines since he was in like sixth grade. He was the anointed one before, he started middle school. And so now we're coming to that realization moment where he is going to now step on the ice against grown-ass men and do it at the highest level. And the excitement is everywhere this kid has gone, he has exceeded expectations. And the expectations have been through the roof. The World Juniors were ridiculous. Everyone knew that he was the guy to stop. Everyone had him circled. He got everyone's best defensive. Nada. And he goes out in his first prospect showcase game against the Minnesota Wild and drops a hat trick.
Yeah.
And 2 of the goals were just like picking your jaw off the floor. Beautiful. I mean, one of them literally, he scores a goal from the left circle, the McDavid special.
I know that.
In front of the net, and you see Colton Dock go surrender cover, and he's standing in front of the net. Like, how the hell did you find that? And they asked him after the game, how'd you find it? He goes, well, I saw some net, so I went for it.
Wow.
Like, an 18-year-old to be that nonchalant about making a play that maybe 3 or 4 people on the planet would even try. Yes.
Yeah.
In a prospect game. Yes.
Well,
it wasn't against NHL players, but to even see it and try it and then make it happen. So the hype level on a scale of 1 to 10, I've got a feeling it's going to be at about 11. But tomorrow morning, the practice rink that the Blackhawks play at has seating for a couple hundred people. It's free to come, but you got to reserve seats because they're already expecting capacity to get blown out. But the doors open at 9:30, and we're going to see what kind of a mad rush it looks like and how far I'm going to have to park from the rink. But Chicago is excited, and they should be because, again, everything that he has done has exceeded incredibly high expectations. And in the world that we live in now with prospect watching and projecting and everything else, I mean, McDavid and Crosby and a lot of these other guys, Eric Lindros, a lot of these guys did not have the hype train. You heard about it if you were in those circles. But the hype train that's international with the social media and the video and the international tournaments getting broadcast in the U.S. and Canada, no one has had the level of hype that Connor Bedard has had ever coming into the league. So the exciting thing, and it can be a little unnerving as well, is now he gets to try to live up to it. And I think that's what's really exciting is to see what he has in store for the National Hockey League.
Well, I think what's amazing with it, if you watch his stick and you put it in slow motion, you're going to see he probably is one of the best players in the world already, just hockey player, to be able to take advantage of the flex of the stick and know how to place that thing. I tell people, I actually see him kind of in a Marcel Dion type of a player to get into places. He is built. He's a brick. He may look small to you. He is put way better together than McDavid was coming in.
I keep telling people that people say he's small. We got to protect him. He's small. There's a difference between not being 6'3" and being small. He is
Crosby.
He's the same height Patrick Kane was when he broke in. He's 25 pounds of muscle bigger. Go look at the video of him at the BioSteel camp or at the combine. The kid's legs are redwood tree trunks.
5'10", 185. 5'10", 185. Crosby, 5'10", 185. There you go.
Yeah.
Big stop.
So, and it took Crosby a couple of years to get to that 185 too. So this kid's coming in much better physical shape than I think a lot of these guys that we talk about back in the day coming in because he's had access to the workout regimens the guys have done before him in the gyms and the stuff like that. But, I mean, he's a well put together young man.
Now, I only see a Stanley Cup final is because Kyle Davidson signed Corey Perry, so obviously you're going that far. You may not win one, but anyways, I mean, he's building guys around him. He's bringing in Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, big bodies that can skate, that can play with him, protect him. But I guess I want to talk a little bit about some of the other prospects. And one of the ones that I've been really watching and I really enjoy seeing play is Lucas Reichel. Could you talk about him and maybe some of the other players?
Yeah, let's do it.
Maybe you're going to get another duo with a Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. I don't want to make the comparisons quickly, like they did in Pittsburgh.
Is that just because Draisaitl and Reichel are both German? Is that where we're going? No, look, I mean, Lucas Reichel is he came over here from Germany right out of the draft. He has spent his time in the AHL developing with the Rockford Ice Hogs. And when Kyle Davidson talked to us yesterday, he said, look, this kid's done everything we've asked him to do. He's worked on his game. He's checked every box. He's going to be a full-time NHL player. And even though he was used almost exclusively as a wing in his first couple tastes at the NHL level, Davidson told us yesterday that he's going to be at center. So it looks like right now you're going to open the season with Connor Bedard and Lucas Reichel as your top two centers in Chicago, which if you're projecting out like, hey, what does the future look like? You're going to have an 18 and 21-year-old as your top two centers. So that's pretty good. I love Reichel's game. I wrote that I'd like to see him shoot more because he needs to be more selfish. He has got great wheels. He's got great hands. And I think this year with him playing down the middle, that's going to give him an opportunity to get more pucks on net, which should lead to better production. He'll probably spend a lot of time with Andreas Athanasiou, another guy who can fly. So you're going to have a lot of speed on that line, which is great. We're still kind of sorting out. We were waiting for training camp to see who's going to be down the right side with Bedard. I think a lot of people assume Taylor Hall will be on the left side with Bedard. But you've got Foligno, you've got Ryan Donato, you've got Tyler Johnson. You've got a lot of veterans with different skill sets that are in the mix there. But Lucas Reichel, I think, is going to be a really good player this year. And frankly, as a first-round pick who's coming in, most times a first-round pick comes into your lineup, there's a lot of attention. This is the best-case scenario for Lucas Reichel because no one is talking about Lucas Reichel.
Yeah.
And before Bedard was drafted, he was the bright, shiny white horse on the hill as up front because the Blackhawks did, before the last 2 years, they didn't have a lot of great forward depth in the system. In fact, they had none outside of him. And now he's almost an afterthought, but the kid's got a ton of speed. He's got a ton of skill. So I love the situation for Lucas Reichel to have a good year because no one's going to pay attention to him until he forces them to.
Yeah.
And I think he's good enough to do that. And then when you look at go ahead.
No, I was going to say, well, and it's interesting because they're playing him at center, but previous to this, my understanding was he wasn't playing center.
Yeah,
he did in the AHL, but up in Chicago, they were using him largely at the wing. But part of that was their development plan, and they didn't want to force too much on him right out of the gate coming up. So they sheltered him a little bit by putting him on the wing, but Davidson said they see him down the middle, and they envision him being a center to start his NHL career full-time this year. So
Carolina often does that where they bring in a setter and they will let him play on the wing in order for them to develop slowly to kind of protect them, shelter them until they're feeling comfortable with the play and the systems and what the coach wants, and then they transition him over. Looking at KK over there from when he came over from Montreal, Kakanyemi, right? So just one of those things. So
and that was a good.
Well, I was going to say the thing about the new Blackhawks front office is the knock on Stan Bowman was that they did not develop prospects well. They either traded him too early, still up to know, or they just didn't draft and develop them for crap. Or they rushed them, like Adam Boquist, who's now in Columbus, like Kirby Doc, who's now in Montreal. Either you rushed their development to a detriment, you didn't develop them at all, you drafted poorly, or you traded them too soon. And
he started injured.
The new regime is very intentionally letting guys maturate at the levels that they need to be at. And they talked about that a lot with Kevin Korchinski. And that's, I think, the next guy on the list that everybody circles is where's he going to go this year? Because he's 19. So it's either back in the WHL with the Seattle Thunderbirds or Chicago. And they said that it's going to be totally up to him. But this kid's got the profile of being a number one defenseman. I hate saying that he looks like a 6'3" Cale Makar because that's incredibly heady. But that's the style of game that he plays. The dude can fly. He's got great wheels. He's got great edges. He's a really good puck handler. He's your dream power play quarterback. And he's 6'3", and he's 190 pounds at 19 years old. And that's the guy that they got with the pick that they got from Alex DeBrincat in Ottawa. So how does Ottawa feel?
Wow. So, hey, there is rumor. The rumor is that they brought in Taylor Hall so that you would get the 2024 first overall pick as your lucky player to bring you the next first overall in Macklin Celebrini.
No, I wouldn't fight it. I wouldn't be mad. I don't think that the draft lottery gods are that kind. If they are, schedule the parade. No, look, you know, it's funny though. Taylor Hall, this will be the 6th time, if Connor Bedard makes his debut on opening night, which he will,
Yeah.
Newsflash, it'll be the sixth other number one pick that Taylor Hall skates with in their debut.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I mean, this dude, I hope he's got jerseys from each one of them, because that's a hell of a collection if he's got, well, except for the guys in Edmonton. I don't think he needs to have Nail Yakupov jersey hanging next to Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier and Connor Bedard. But no, yeah, it would be incredible if Taylor Hall was a good luck charm. So there's got to be a balance, though, right? Because if Corey Perry's getting the playoffs,
that's true.
Taylor Hall's going to get us the number one. Though,
so Chicago can settle for an Iserman. Okay, well, what about Frank Nazar? What about Frank Nazar? What's he looking like this year?
Well, I love the kid. This is the other thing that I love. The Blackhawks front office, when they interviewed Luke Richardson, they took him out to a bar for dinner and watched the Tampa Colorado Stanley Cup final. And they were like, that's what we have to be. We have to be faster. So last year, they get Frank Nazar at 13, the fastest skater in the draft. And by the love of whatever God you believe in, Oliver Moore falls into their lap at 19 this year, and they get the best skater in this year's draft. And both of those kids are going to be in the Big Ten this year. Nazar had a lower body issue that he had to get cleaned up with a hip last year, so he missed about 2/3 of Michigan's season. Came up, showed some flashes, but the wheels were still getting there.
Yeah.
You guys saw any of what he did at the U.S. Summer Showcase for the World Juniors? The legs are back.
We saw.
It ridiculous. Next level speed, and he finishes. He's another guy that's 5'10", so the question now kind of starts to become Oliver Moore, about a 5'11", 6 foot center. Nazar about 5'10" center. You got Aiden Thompson, who's about a 5'10" center out at Denver. They've got Dominic James, who's about a 6 foot center at Minnesota Duluth, and Ryan Green, who I love, who's about a 6'2" center at Boston University. They're loaded with centers, lots of different size, lots of different skill. But I mean, Nazar, again, you're talking about a guy, a speed racer, and he's in a program at Michigan now where with Fantilli making the move to Columbus, he sets up as possibly
being his opportunity
center. And if he's skating up there with Gavin Brindley and Rutger McGorty, you've got a top line that's all NHL players, soon to be. And I think Nazar is a guy that could very easily put up Hobey Baker level numbers this year, because Michigan is always that loaded, and he's got the wheels and the skill set to do it. And the Big Ten is good enough at the bottom that he's going to get attention. But he's a guy that I'm really, really excited to see fully healthy this year, because the toolkit that he brings to the ice is just filthy.
It's crazy.
Very nice. So, Evan?
Yeah.
Are we doing good for time?
Yeah. So why don't we'll got one more question we'll go with here. Before we do, maybe just can you tell people where they can follow you? You do a bunch of stuff, Tab, so let everyone know where they can follow you. And then afterwards, we'll get you in our former guests, and we'll have all the info for folks later on.
Absolutely. So, as you guys said, I am the Blackhawks guy at Bleacher Nation, which covers everything in Chicago except the White Sox, which has been a little bit of a dumpster fire with the Bears and the Bulls lately, and the Cubs are trying to get in the playoffs. So I'm trying to keep our heads above water here in Chicago. On Twitter and all of the other startup Twitter knockoffs, X, whatever we're calling it these days, the thing that you send your thoughts to, it's at the one tab, THE1TAB, which you can see next to my name on the screen. So yeah, hit me up. Let me know what you think about the Blackhawks this year. Feel free to be positive. Very, very rarely is that the case. But yeah, Bleacher Nation is where I'm at. And as you said, I've got a couple books out on the shelf. So if you look my name up on Amazon, you might find something that you like.
That's crazy. Yeah, we definitely will. We'll definitely. So we'll have you under our former guests, and then we'll grab all your info, find places for people to be able to find you and check stuff out. We'll definitely have to touch base again. So why don't we do this? Let's pull away from Chicago for a moment. You talk so many things Chicago. You don't always get time to talk everything NHL. So just give us a picture of what you see this season, envisioning a couple things that you're looking forward to for storylines outside of the Bedard and the Chicago storylines.
Well, in the Western Conference where Chicago resides, I think for me, a couple things that I'm watching are Does Seattle's young horses, can they do what they did last year, or do they build on that and get better? With some of the tweaks that the LA Kings made, are they good enough to challenge for a division crown out there? What kind of Stanley Cup hangover with some of the losses is Vegas going to experience?
Interesting.
And can Edmonton figure it out and actually win the whole damn thing? Because I think that's the biggest question everyone has is, can Edmonton figure it out and win the whole thing? And is Erik Karlsson really the missing piece in Pittsburgh for them to get back to the mountaintop? But the other thing in the Eastern Conference that I am watching incredibly closely is, who the hell are the Boston Bruins?
That's true.
Bergeron retired, Krejci retired, Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno are in Chicago.
Yeah.
Already got a couple injuries that they're dealing with. Other guys left in free
agent. Is your number one center, allegedly.
Right? Yeah. So that is not even your dad's Boston Bruins. That's not even last year's. They're a shell of what they were last year. Yeah. And I think to expect them to just waltz into the playoffs because they had the best regular season ever last year is incredibly naive. Like when you look at other teams like Detroit's on the come, Ottawa is bringing it. Buffalo's not going away. Ottawa, I really like their lineup top to bottom, but Buffalo might have two future Norris Trophy winners in Dahlin and Owen Power.
Wow.
So when you look at how some of the teams are ascending in the East, Boston didn't slightly slide back to the pack. They went down the slide and everybody else is standing there waiting for them. So I'm really interested to see what the Boston Bruins look like this year, because with all that they lost, and now with Brad Marchand as the captain, following Chara and Bergeron, he now becomes the identity of the team. What is the team around him? And how does Pasternak produce without all those other guys for people to pay attention to?
Exactly. That's crazy, eh? Wow.
And
well, hey, man.
I love Carolina, by the way. I absolutely love Carolina.
You like those jerks, eh?
I love them. And, I think that I respect that they're the Hurricanes. I think that the third jersey with the Hurricane flag on it is a great look. But just go back to the full-blown whale. When they dust off the whale, it's amazing. And they get the brass bonanza out. I'm here for it. But that team, if they can stay healthy, man, the Eastern Conference looks like it's so good, and it's none of the teams that have been so good for so long. It's like Pittsburgh is all applying for ARP cards. Washington has half of their guys in wheelchairs already. Florida's down half of their blue line already. Tampa pissed off Stamkos. The Rangers, I don't know, like Lafreniere and Kakko, are they ever going to finish puberty and become NHLers, or are they just third-line guys forever? Like, are they good for 30 goals together? 30 each. So it's really exciting that you've got a young wave of talent coming into the league that is changing the face of the league again. And this is what people hate, the hard salary cap system. But what's great about it is you have this cycle where teams get bad. And if you draft and develop well, you can ascend, because you have to spend money. You can't spend too much. And we have such great talent coming into the game right now. Some of the best we've ever seen. It's really, really an exciting time to just be a hockey fan as a whole.
That's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. It's probably the most exciting time. I'm from the 80s. I'm an 80s boy. I was born in 70. And so I started following when I was 9 years old, 1979. And I can actually say that I don't know if I've ever saw this kind of talent and skill on display in games, not at all-star games, but in games on a regular basis. It's amazing.
Yeah, you look at the national TV slate and you could legitimately say, I'm going to flip on TNT in the U.S. and watch 5 future Hall of Famers tonight.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Just sit back and that feels like you're throwing hyperbole around like a $3 bill, but it's real. Like, if you turn on a Penguins game with Malkin, Crosby, and Karlsson, they've got 3 of their own.
Yeah.
There are so many good players ending their run, and you got so many that are just coming, that the balancing act is going to be awesome. But I love where the game is at right now. It's so healthy. People just need to watch it.
I just like to say the beasts of the East, I don't think are anymore. It's the West that I think is the one that you need to look for. That's where the cup's coming again. Just a thought.
Which beast in the West do you think is going to grab it?
Well, I think you're looking still between Vegas, Colorado, and Edmonton. One of those three is going to be there.
It's between Dallas and Edmonton.
Dallas ain't coming. They're not ready yet.
And I hate
Are you kidding me? You got Jason Robertson.
Division, but
yeah.
You got Joe Pavelski.
But the question is Matt Duchene a grenade in that room like he has been everywhere else?
Sorry, what's that, Tab?
I said the only question I have for Dallas is Matt Duchene a grenade in the room like he has been everywhere else?
Oh, that's
his skill for pennies on the dollar feels like highway robbery with the skill they have.
I want to talk about more so quickly, just to allude to Dallas. Rupe Hens, who's not talked enough about a top line center, and Miro Heiskanen, or Heiskanen, however you pronounce it, as a top 10 defenseman in the league. Just saying that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I do not think they have they don't have the coaching. I don't think that's going to be able to take them through to make the changes mid game. That's my concern.
Well, the good news is they've got about a year left to run with that roster, and then the world's going to catch up to them because Jamie Benn's not getting younger. Tyler Seguin's not getting any younger. When you look at what Arizona's got coming, I mean, a lot of their young guys took a big step forward last year. Now they got Logan Cooley joining it. Like, good luck handicapping the Calder this year. You got Bedard in Chicago.
Oh my God!
Cooley in Arizona. Don't forget, Luke Hughes is jumping into a loaded New Jersey team, and they might hand him the keys to the power play.
Yeah.
Talk about begging for a defenseman to have 75 points as a rookie.
Well, I appreciate Tab. I really appreciate that you didn't try to pump your own wagon back in Chicago with Bedard. But man, hands down, Bedard's got this as long as there's no injuries this year. So it doesn't matter what kind of team he's got around. So. Yeah.
Knock on wood, we hope that there aren't. But just remember, there have been some other legendary players who didn't take home the Calder. And I think Edmonton is totally cool with McDavid having as many hearts as he does at the expense of a single Calder. No, they'd like to see a ring.
McDavid. There was another great legend that played at Edmonton that didn't win a Calder. Just FYI.
Yeah, that was a little more political than McDavid missing 40 games.
No,
Are you
walking water on his way to the rink? Turn the wine for the first 3 rows on Thursday night games when it was hockey night in Canada.
Well, thanks again, Tab, so much for joining us here tonight, guys. So the cigar smoking Tab Bamford, you can check him out at Bleacher Nation with all the writing, all things around Chicago. If you want to check in on what's happening in the newest news, make sure you go over there and check it out. And we're depending on you for a good vote because I believe you have a vote. You're also a part of the Professional Hockey Writers Association, correct?
I am.
Okay, make sure you vote McDavid this year. He needs to win again. We want to go after Gretzky's record.
Well, he's going after a lot of Gretzky's records, I think, at this point in his maturation. So I think it's like you said with Bedard and the Calder. I think most people that are wagering on such things would probably say if he stays healthy, there really isn't a second option.
Yeah, no, true so much. All right, man. Well, thanks so much for taking the time tonight. Greatly appreciate it. We'll touch base soon again.
Sounds good. Good chatting with you guys. We'll do it again.
Yeah, you betcha. Keep your stick on the ice, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was great talking.
Heck of an insight into the Chicago Blackhawks organization. That was amazing. Evan, why don't we finish up a little early tonight to give people a break? One last thought each, or do you have some topics you want to cover?
There's a couple things I wanted to talk about just before we do a wrap. So number one, I just want to talk about and say a hats off over to the Vegas Golden Knights. If you have not heard, they had a longtime fan who talked about if they won the Stanley Cup, he would like that Stanley Cup to be at his graveside. This last year, one of their season ticket holders, they actually took the cup and got a picture with it at his graveside. Like, that's how you build community, right? You know, and for a bunch of you folk, obviously, don't look at pictures when you thought that the celebration of the Stanley Cup was not big or that it was a bunch of people just visiting and ranting. They have an incredible large following. In fact, there's very few Canadian cities that can match that. The only thing we don't know yet is until the demise of the Vegas Golden Knights, when they no longer have a winning team, Will they still have the same followership? That's the question.
Hard to say, yeah, but
yeah, exactly. So a couple things. The Professional Women's Hockey League. I just want to say congratulations to all those that were signed as free agents to start, those that came in. We are working right now. Now, unfortunately, we are booked. Fortunately and unfortunately, we are booked with guests right almost now into December. But someone that we're trying to get on late November, early December is Carly Jackson. So she ended up taking a coaching position. You can go on to our Facebook as well as onto my Twitter at RevNev, or follow Pavel over at hockey_2. If you don't know what underscore is, it's that little line underneath if you're looking for him. But if you're wanting to find some more out, so she's taking a coaching position while she continues to work towards her career as assistant coach in Mount Allison. So is where she is in U Sports, as well as we have 3 other people lined up for the PWHL. I have some insiders that do on analytics that we're trying to negotiate a working time, because we want to continue to talk. And we're also going to talk about the NHL and the work behind the scenes with one league. And this is something we've talked about a while back with Leah Hextall, as well as with Cassidy Sauvé, Jalen Spooner, and a few others. So, but at this point, and we're excited for 5 for Fighting. Alex, we got him booked again to come back this year. Man, that we need to spend more time on his fight stories, the guys he's interviewed over the years, and maybe show a little clip of some of the fight scenes there at the beginning and the end for that one. So, any last thoughts, man, that you want to throw out there before we give probably
they made the right
8-9 minute
decision
wrap?
in Columbus with Mike Babcock, and we're done with it. He did not even apologize for his comments, as we talked about last week. I'm glad that Pascal Vincent got elevated to that role. Congrats to him, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Columbus does this season, because they definitely are like Chicago, loaded with a lot of young prospects and talent, including Fantilli and Cole Sillinger. So I'm looking forward to it. Otherwise, nothing else left on my hand.
Well, I just like to say I don't have the same take as Pavel. I have no problem with Babcock not being coaching anymore, but I like to say and go back to this. I think the whole process was screwed up. I still said that last week. I believe it. He had to go. Okay, he had to go. There's a proper process. This built the show. This has put Biz Nasty through the roof. I think he was nasty. He's using it as a celebrity post. He's trying to get it where everybody comes to him because he is a narcissist, just like you guys don't like Trump. That's my feeling on Biz, man. I mean, hey, all great with him. No. You wanted to make a statement. I'm making my statement. And I am telling you that what happened, and to make a statement and say that, well, he didn't apologize and everyone's going on. I hope everyone realizes that there is a due process and they have to deal with lawsuits and stuff. You cannot just say whatever you want. When your lawyers come to you, they draw things up in certain ways that got to be done. So let's look at the whole context. I'm not talking to Pavel. I'm just talking in general to everybody here. So my take's different than Pavel on this. I do believe that they need to move on. But I do need to say that players need to quit acting like their phone is their left arm. That's all I got to say, man. That's my take for the day.
Well, we thank you guys all for tuning in tonight. We appreciate it. Remember to give us a like, share, subscribe, and a follow on YouTube, on Facebook, everywhere you can find us. We're connected with Sports Empire. We're looking over at you, at Key, Freddie, and the whole team there. Kyle, we love you guys. We appreciate the follow and the supports. Remember JR Web Designs, Penny Billionaires for our theme song. We appreciate Tab coming on the show tonight and helping us out.
Absolutely.
Really shedding some light on the Chicago Blackhawks and everything. And we just appreciate it, guys. We can't wait to see you next week. We got more planned, more guests, more hockey news. Training camp starts up right away here. We're looking forward to talking all things hockey. And Evan?
Yeah. Well, as they said in the famous words of Ed Whalen, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your
and
sticks.
he didn't on the ice. Take care, guys.
Stay safe, everyone. We love you.
Could that just put him over the edge?
I'm not too sure. I don't think they did well.
He's a bully.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm over the fire, and it's burning, I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tide. I'll live, I'll die, for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
They still have a lot of holes to fill.
He didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. No, he didn't get fired. He never got his contract renewed.